You've packed the trail mix, laced up your boots, and reached the summit, only to realize your smartphone camera just can't capture the breathtaking scale of the view. If you're tired of coming home from epic hikes with underwhelming photos, you need a camera built for the trail. In this video, I'm breaking down my top 5 picks for the best hiking cameras currently on the market. From rugged pocket-sized point-and-shoots to high-resolution mirrorless powerhouses, there is something here for every type of hiker. 5. OM System Olympus Tough TG7. When I first tossed this camera into my daypack, I completely bypassed the protective case, and that is exactly the point of this device. It is built like an absolute tank, boasting waterproof capabilities down to 50 feet, shockproof survival from a 7-foot drop, and crush-proof resistance up to 220 pounds of force. You literally do not have to worry about this camera when you are out scrambling over jagged rocks or crossing deep rivers. On the trail, the peace of mind is undeniably fantastic. I took this out on a grueling hike through a muddy gorge where it poured rain for 3 hours straight, and the TG7 didn't skip a beat. It also features this incredibly fun microscope macro mode, which allowed me to capture some stunningly detailed shots of moss and tiny insects along the path that larger setups would have struggled to focus on. However, that rugged exterior comes with some significant compromises under the hood. The TG7 relies on a tiny 1/2.33-inch sensor, which frankly feels a bit prehistoric in today's market. In bright midday sunlight, the photos are punchy and perfectly usable for social media or small prints. But the moment you step under a dense forest canopy or try to shoot during blue hour, the image quality degrades dramatically. I noticed significant noise and muddy details in my shadows when shooting a sunrise hike, which was incredibly frustrating when trying to capture the moody atmosphere of the morning. It forces you to rely heavily on the built-in flash or completely miss the shot when the lighting gets challenging. 4. Canon PowerShot G7X Mark III. I brought this compact point-and-shoot on a multi-day backpacking trip specifically because of its incredibly small footprint. It weighs almost nothing and slips effortlessly into the hip belt pocket of my backpack, meaning I never had an excuse to leave it packed away when a spontaneous photo opportunity arose. The core of this camera is its 1-inch sensor, paired with a bright 24 to 100mm equivalent f1.8 to 2.8 lens. This setup provides a massive leap in image quality compared to a smartphone, especially in terms of creating that beautiful background blur when shooting portraits of my hiking partners or close-ups of trail flora. It also features excellent built-in stabilization and uncropped 4K video, which made it a joy to use for quick trail vlogging without needing a heavy gimbal. Despite its convenience, the G7X Mark III has a few glaring downfalls that became extremely irritating the longer I spent in the wilderness. My biggest gripe is the complete lack of an electronic viewfinder. When you are hiking above the tree line in blinding midday sun, trying to compose a shot using only the rear LCD screen is an exercise in pure frustration. I found myself squinting, shading the screen with my hand, and basically guessing my composition on more than one occasion. Another frustrating limitation on the trail is the autofocus system. While it is fine for static landscapes and casual vlogs, it relies on contrast detection autofocus rather than the much faster phase detection found in rival cameras. When a golden eagle suddenly swooped across the valley during my descent, the camera simply hunted for focus and completely missed the moment. 3. Sony RX100 VII. When I wanted a camera that offered maximum reach without the burden of heavy interchangeable lenses, this was the absolute undisputed champion of my gear closet. The sheer engineering magic of fitting a 24 to 200mm equivalent zoom lens into a body that genuinely fits into your pants pocket is something that completely changed my approach to lightweight hiking photography. Taking this camera out on the trails of the Pacific Northwest, I was immediately blown away by the versatility. One minute I was shooting a wide, sweeping landscape of a distant mountain range at 24mm, and the next minute I was zooming all the way into 200mm to capture a tight, detailed shot of a marmot sunbathing on a rock. You get the focal range of a heavy telephoto setup, but in a device that weighs about 10 ounces. What truly sets the RX100 VII apart from its competitors is Sony's legendary autofocus system. It features real-time tracking and eye autofocus inherited directly from their professional full-frame cameras. When that marmot suddenly darted across the rocks, the continuous autofocus locked onto it instantly and tracked it flawlessly at 20 frames per second. It is a miniature wildlife camera disguised as a point-and-shoot. Sony also addressed the exact issue I had with the Canon by including a brilliant pop-up electronic viewfinder. It springs up with the flick of a switch, allowing you to hold the camera steady against your face and clearly see your composition, even in the most blinding alpine sunlight. The screen articulates beautifully as well, but having that EVF makes it feel like a serious photographer's tool rather than a toy. 2. Sony Alpha 6700. When I realized I needed the flexibility of interchangeable lenses and the superior image quality of an APS-C sensor without stepping up to the immense weight of a full-frame system, the A6700 became my go-to workhorse. Its grip has been redesigned to be deeper and more ergonomic, which felt incredibly secure in my hand even when I was sweating my way up a steep switchback. The standout feature of the A6700 on the trail is its dedicated AI processing unit for autofocus. I tested this extensively during a hike through a dense, shadowy forest where I spotted a deer moving through the brush. The AI subject recognition instantly identified the animal, placed a box over its eye, and held focus flawlessly through the branches and leaves. It practically guarantees that your wildlife shots will be tack-sharp, taking a huge amount of stress out of those fleeting moments. The 26-megapixel backside illuminated sensor delivers incredibly clean, highly detailed files. I pushed the shadows heavily in post-production on some of my high-contrast sunrise shots, and the files held together beautifully with minimal noise. It captures the vibrant greens of the forest and the deep blues of the sky with an impressive dynamic range that smaller sensors simply cannot replicate, making your landscape shots pop right off the screen. For video shooters who like to document their hikes, the A6700 is an absolute powerhouse. It shoots uncropped 4K video, oversampled from 6K, and the active in-body image stabilization does a fantastic job of smoothing out handheld footage as you walk along the trail. Combined with its comprehensive weather sealing, I felt completely confident shooting video while standing near misty waterfalls and hiking through light drizzle. 1. FUJIFILM X-T5. There are cameras that simply record what is in front of them. And then there are cameras that make you actively want to go out and shoot. The X-T5 is unquestionably the latter. When I slung this over my shoulder for a multi-day trek in the Rockies, it provided the most enjoyable, engaging photographic experience I've ever had on a trail. At the heart of this beautifully retro-designed body is a massive 40-megapixel APS-C sensor. The level of detail this camera captures is absolutely staggering. I took a wide shot of a sweeping glacial valley, and when I zoomed in on the computer later, I could clearly make out the individual pine trees on the distant ridge. It gives you incredible cropping power, which is effectively like having a longer telephoto lens with you without adding a single extra ounce to your pack. What makes the X-T5 my ultimate hiking camera is the tactile physical dial system. When you are wearing gloves on a freezing morning hike, diving into digital menus on a touchscreen is miserable. With the X-T5, I can adjust my ISO, shutter speed, and exposure compensation using large, satisfying physical dials on the top plate. It allows you to check your settings at a glance before you even turn the camera on, keeping you connected to the environment rather than a computer screen.